Hi folks, these are your common citation errors presentations to hopefully clarify how you understand how to do sources so you can all do it expertly on your debate and research proposals. There are really two separate things that are happening with citation. There's the grammar of citation. That's thing one. That's where the periods go, where the parentheses go, how you should use signal phrases, that kind of stuff. And then there's the integration or use of sources. And for me, that second piece is much more important. Um, so I'll go through these as you might have when you were working on them. So here's the first one. What you might notice here, many people did, is that the periods, they should be going after um, the parentheses. That tells us that this citation, in fact, belongs to what's going on here. Right now, the period is a clear mark that says something has ended here. Um, and so you don't really know exactly where this belongs. So that happens throughout. That is a grammar issue. It's confusing, it's problematic, it's not horrible. The real challenging part in this first paragraph, and I put this one first for a reason, is that all of this information is taken from a source. There's none of the author's own ideas, perspectives, opinions, beliefs inside of that. Here's a, this is the author sort of integrating or uh, analyzing that evidence for the reader. But that's the only part that comes from the reader. Really, you want to balance 50-50, 60-40 you in relation to the source. That use of sources is much more problematic there in the first example. Folks, this second paragraph, there's clearly information here that is taken from a source. Some of this has got to be coming from somewhere. Now, it might be that this person spent years in Africa and is familiar with the diamond trade from first-person experience. That's great, perfectly legitimate to use, depending on your audience. But we don't have any idea where that's coming from in this paper here. This paragraph, if I see a paragraph like this will get you an F. Because you've clearly taken source material, someone, the author, has clearly taken source material without giving it any credit. So on to example 2. Those are the really clear-cut ones. Example 2, it's got a nice topic sentence here, right? This, I think, is from a debate essay about vending machines in schools. And so that's good. The author's putting his or her point on the thing. Then there's a move to sources. Now, if I can highlight everything that comes from the sources, you can sort of start to see how it's it's more balanced certainly in the first example, but still a lot of data, a lot of evidence there. So I'd encourage some depth and development in this, and perhaps some additional development here. Again, we've got that this comma doesn't go here. That's a grammar issue. A couple things with the signal phrases here. I like signal phrases. They're really important, particularly when you're paraphrasing. They can add a lot of credibility to your paper, so I think they're really useful. Here we have the signal phrase at the beginning. Your readers can reasonably assume that this data is coming from a source, even though the signal phrase doesn't happen, before. We know this is coming from a source. So then the signal phrase comes here. We know who the author is. Folks, if you name the author in a signal phrase, you do not need to put it in in-text citation here. Okay. So if you're paraphrasing and you name them in a signal phrase, you're going to have to then come back here to let the reader know if you're continuing with source material or if you are moving back to your own perspective. Useful phrases like this means, or we can see, or this data shows clearly demonstrate that you're coming back to your own voice to integrate that information. Here we've got another citation that works too to pile on a couple of pieces of data. One of the things that's kind of problematic, and this is a grammar issue, is that we have this here, clearly a citation. We have this here, which is an abbreviation of this material that comes before. So you really got to be careful with how you're using those. There's a couple examples of that later on. That's the end of my free 5 minutes. I'll post another link here momentarily. All right, folks, here we are with the citation errors video 2. This is just the bottom of example 3 where we left off in the last video. So when I look at this paragraph here, I think there's some problems with this one. In part, one of the things is that the sources lead the paragraph. So in general, folks, I'm going to encourage you to have your ideas first, followed by support from sources. And then, it's not quite clear if this information is coming from a source or if it's the author's, that information, or if that's the author's interpretation. And so really I'm looking for just precision and clarity in all of your citation work. Here we are on to page 2. We've got a grammar issue with the quotations being outside of the parentheses. Obviously, the parentheses say this is exactly what came from the source. And obviously this in-text citation did not come exactly from the source. But the author's done pretty well here. This is a little better paragraph. And then we've got this sort of after evidence development, which helps to integrate those. One of the things you'll probably see me say quite a bit, and that's the reason this is on here, is that this, friends, is a dropped quotation. And it's a sentence which starts with a quotation and a sentence which ends with that same quotation. So there's nothing of the author's own words in this citation here. The paragraph starts with a quote, paragraph ends, or the sentence ends with a quote. And so there's nothing there that can bridge from your words, your ideas, into that source material. Kind of like a speed bump for the reader. They're reading along, they're getting your ideas, all of a sudden they're somewhere else, all of a sudden they're back to your main idea. So there's a signal phrase, some explanation, some paraphrasing, some of that's going to integrate that material for you. Here it's the same problem. I think this is kind of a minor problem. It's sort of confusing, but I know what's coming from the source and I know what's coming not from the source. What I like about this paragraph is we have the source material preceded by a signal phrase. This is material that's from the author. So it's it's author, source, source. This material comes from a source. This is another dropped quotation. And one of the things, folks, that I think is really useful and important is that you don't have to learn every single rule of grammar, grammar or citation. Some of you have, a pretty good handle on these things already. What you really got to do is learn what kind of errors you have the tendency to make. And this author obviously has a tendency to drop quotations in. So instead of working on the whole thing, you can just work on the pieces that you need. I just got a couple minutes left in this video, so I'll show you this. Sorry, this example 3. So this is another kind of paragraph which will get you an F, or which will be very, very problematic. It's not really clear where this source material starts, and that's why the signal phrases are so important. So it looks like all of this material here may be coming from a source, but some of it may be coming from the author, him or herself. There's just nothing which will let us know what that is. As folks pointed out, anytime you use quotations in a research article, it looks like you're quoting. So a lot of folks will use the sort of air quotes, like, I'm very tired, quote unquote, today. We can hear the air quotes in my voice. And it's just a little confusing because it looks like it's a quote from the sources. Another challenging element here, so we've got these like 7 sentences from the source, and we got this 1 sentence from the source, and that means this entire paragraph is taken from the source, right? And we really want you to be leading with the sources in support. There are a couple other problematic elements here in the rest of the examples, but I'm going to stop there. That's the majority of them. So folks, think about using sources and the grammar of sources sort of separately, and try to work on integrating them, using sources in support of your ideas rather than having them lead the argument. You could do that by keeping in your topic sentences, your ideas in your topic sentences, and by ending paragraphs with your own integration, explanation, and argumentation. If you got questions, post in the discussion. Thanks.